What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Moguls. My name is Findlay-Shirras, and on today's show, we have our first repeat guest. Because his career has changed, he has stepped up in the real estate industry and taken on a huge role as the CEO of RESO, which stands for the Real Estate Standards Organization. So if you want to understand the infrastructure of the real estate industry and what innovation needs to happen to move the industry forward, you're going to want to stay tuned for this interview. Now, before RESO, he was the VP of Strategic Growth and Managing Broker for the ColdWell banker Danforth franchise in Seattle. He was the past president of the Seattle King County of Realtors. And in 2019, he was the NAR's president liaison for MLS and data management. That's probably why he's now in the role. So he's got an accounting background and a consulting background. He writes for Swamppool, Inman News, Realtor Magazine, Wall Street Journal, and as a result, he's been on Swamppool's Power 200, Inman's Top 100 Influencers list. So let's welcome back this mega leader in real estate, Sam Debord.
Thanks for being here, Grant. Great to see you
Sam,
again.
for coming on the show.
Nice to do this in person.
Again, I know, finally. Last time it was just on Zoom, but now we get to sit and have a fireside.
That is a nice background.
So let's just dive into RESO. Most of people watching this, I don't even think they even understand what is RESO and what do you guys do. So why don't you let everyone know?
Sure. So RESO is Real Estate Standards Organization. So we're an open standards organization that allows for innovation in technology in the real estate industry. So we were started about 20 years ago by folks who said we need our data and our technology to be able to talk to each other. We need a common language so that brokers and agents and their consumers can get technology tools that share data and can do that in a simple way. And I liken that to the smartphone experience, where you're used to buying a new smartphone, the apps update automatically, it connects to Spotify and downloads your playlists, connects to your Nest thermostat, you can update your AC at home while you're on the road, you can go to Amazon and buy things right away. And these are seamless integrations because they're built on the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is built on open standards, which is what RESO does. So you had all those competitors, Facebook, Amazon, Sony, Apple, who all said, let's collaborate, make a technology foundation that is built on open standards we can all agree to, and will really just float all boats. It's that rising tide. That we all have a better technology foundation, and we provide that seamless experience to consumers. So that's what RESO does for the real estate industry, is make sure that MLS technology, broker technology, agent technology, and even consumer-facing technology can be built on the same standards and the same kind of data, so everyone knows how to exchange that information, and we really allow for innovation that way.
Okay. And so you talked about like 20 years ago, this whole thing being created, and yet there's still people to this day who don't even know what RESO is. Why do you think that is? Is there any like group or party in real estate that does not want this to happen?
I don't think there's anyone that doesn't want it to happen, but the fact is the way we created the industry technologically was lots and lots of siloed outposts. That's just how we created MLSs. So we had thousands of organizations building their own data repositories, building their own data sharing systems, and over time we've all come to realize we need to upgrade that infrastructure so all these systems can talk to each other, but that's expensive. It takes time, it takes money, and it takes organizations the willingness to strategically see that as their goal while they're still running their businesses day to day. They've got so many other things they're doing. So we've got investment into RESO. We have over 850 member organizations now. The industry knows that what we're doing is important and that we need to move there. It's really all about the rate of change. The fact that I could talk to an agent or a broker about APIs and their eyes might glaze over. But if we talk about the fact that your tools don't work together or it's difficult for your technology staff to get access to data because you work in multiple MLSs, they understand that's why their systems aren't where they should be, and so it's really about a commitment by the industry to upgrade our infrastructure to modern technology. So that's the kind of value we can provide to professionals in the industry.
So how do you guys make money, or who funds everything you guys do?
So we're a member-driven organization. So we're a nonprofit organization. We have, as I said, over 850 members. So those are multiple listing services, realtor associations, brokers, technology companies who work directly with consumers. So we have a couple conferences a year where we bring those folks together. They have work group meetings where they work directly on the standards as well. But we're really driven by the goodwill of the industry for the folks that understand that the big picture is that brokers and agents have challenges. It's a difficult market for them in terms of competing with all kinds of new business models and technology. And while that's exciting, we also need to be moving forward outside of those competitive situations between brokers, between MLSs, between different companies. There's a common goal of moving toward that. So that's where member organizations come in and say, we do want to contribute, we want to be members, we want to pay dues. We also want to bring our developers in and have them work on standards, help them develop products that really move the industry forward.
Because that seems to me like the past infrastructure was great for when there was no internet. It does not look good for now that there's internet and technology and software and all these cool tech companies. And the transition that everyone's trying to get through, it's like we all probably want to be there with uniform data and standards and easy access and cheap access, but it's going to take a lot of money and resources to go get there. And I have a sense that you guys are lacking in those resources. And so how do you get more? Like, shouldn't there be a big calling for almost like a mandate of everyone has to contribute a percentage of their commissions to helping the industry move forward? Like,
I wish I had thought up that question myself, because I appreciate you asking it that way. No, it's a good question. We just need more of the industry to really commit to this, as this is what's important. If you think about having 600 MLSs, each of them having many, many brokerages, many more agents, and then technology vendors that work with each of those folks, the logistics needed to get the entire industry to change its infrastructure through all those levels of technology and data, it's a big hill to get over. And so I think that's why I'm not surprised that the rate of change is a little slower than most folks would want. There's some frustration there in the industry. At the same time, it's important that more and more organizations commit to come and say, we're willing to do the work. And we've had some great organizations get out in front of this and say, for example, we're not going to take on any more new partnerships that are not based on the brand new standards that have come through RESO, whether that's accessing and sharing data through the web API, which is really just modern data sharing. Every technology company working today, every developer understands what a modern API looks like, and they're coming into the industry and they can work right away with technology and share it more easily with all of our professionals. Whereas lots of folks have built systems on the old system, which was called RETS, which has worked fine, but it's never been ideal. It was something we needed because we didn't have anything in place previously. As we moved away from FTP, which was very, very archaic, but again, we did a lot of things that just needed to be done because they would work at the time. And we're getting to the point now where technology companies are saying, enough is enough. We need to move forward. This is going to be hard work. We're going to push our partners to do it with us as well. And we see that from technology vendors. We see that from MLS organizations who have said, we've been talking about this for long enough. We're going to start turning off the old technology. We're going to give all of our vendors a heads up and say, you've got a time frame to do this. We know it's going to be hard, but it's time for us all to make that commitment. And that's really where the industry moves forward.
because if they don't do this, what's the threat? What's the thing that might happen?
Well,
if we don't move fast enough.
Sure, I think that's what everybody in the industry is asking right now. With all of the unbelievable amount of venture capital coming in, most of that influencing technology companies, there's this existential threat, I think, that MLSs and brokers feel that they're not competing on a level playing field. And that's because we're holding ourselves back with our technology in some cases. And again, this isn't folks who want to hold us back. They're just limited by their choices and the logistics of bringing all their partners together to really move the industry forward. So I think there's, at this point in time in the industry, with as much that we see in terms of new technology, venture capital, new business models, it's becoming really clear that to preserve that really important and valuable role that the brokerage and the agent play with working with consumers, everybody's understanding we really need to move data and technology forward to be able to give those consumers that experience they expect that they get from their other technology.
Because I'm just thinking in my head, like, You just need a bunch of developers and a bunch of people to liaison with all the MLSs. And that, in an ideal world, you'd have a budget every year to go have that team in place. And it would take, I don't know, a year, 2 years to just fix it all if you had like a ton of money. Have you ever thought, I know it has been long since you've been in the role yet, but have you thought about like how much money would it take to hire the developers that we need and the partnership liaisons that we need to just get it done?
So as far as RESO goes, I think I would love to have that team of developers, but our role is really not to do the implementation for the technology vendors and for the MLSs. It's really to show them how it can be done.
Right.
So as an open standards organization, we want them to be able to compete with each other, be innovative, create new technology. But to your point, for us to create great clients that they can look at, open source software, and say, this is how it's done. This is the process. That certainly takes development time and money.
Yeah.
And the other thing is talking to people about how that process works. There's a fear of some organizations that it's going to be really difficult, that it's going to take so much work that they really shouldn't even attempt it. Whereas we've got organizations now getting out front of that. And we can say, look at this MLS who's done it. They've made the move. Here were the pain points, but they got through it. Look at this technology vendor who said, we're only going web API data at this point for access. And the first one took us a long time, but the second and third only took a half day for us to adapt these new technologies and new marketplaces. So for us in terms of support, it's really about being able to sort of shine that light on how the technology should work and then how it's being implemented in the marketplace so that others can follow that. There's a lot of logistics and maybe politics and organizational things that come into play when you've got associations and committees and MLSs as well. But I think if everybody can see that example of a great technology company or a great MLS who said, we've done this, here's how it works, you're going to be okay, you're going to be better off, that's really what's most important for us right now.
So hearing all this, you got bureaucracy, you've got herding cats, which is basically what MLSs and brokerages. You've rattled off probably already a dozen different terms that some people listening have no idea what you just said. Why did you want to do this? like it sounds so complicated.
It is. I think that's when you get so deep into some of these things in the industry, you understand why a lot of folks haven't had the chance to understand it yet, because it can be so complicated and wrapped up in so many layers of industry inside baseball. When I heard that the former CEO, Jeremy Crawford, was leaving, I wasn't looking for a new position. I worked with a great brokerage at ColdWell Banker Danforth, great ownership group. They've got a very progressive business model. But I've also spent a lot of time doing consulting and working with the boards of directors for MLSs, for associations, for brokerages. And sometimes something just hits you like a load of bricks. You can see what a great, valuable organization has been built up by the folks who have worked at RESO over the years. And you can also see where your frustrations have been as a broker. And the connections that, knowledge-wise, a lot of the folks just don't have because they haven't gotten that deep into the organization. You could see the steps that we can take to really bring that value to the industry. And I suppose at a certain point, it's, if not me, then who? They've done fantastic things at RESO and put us in a position now where we can just deliver. We've got all these great standards in place, and we just need to help people adopt and get over that hump. And it's a fascinating place to work. It's unbelievable, like most places. Once you get under the hood, there's a whole lot there that you didn't realize was there. But this is really the center of what's driving innovation in the industry right now, and can be the center of what's holding people back if the adoption doesn't happen. So for me, supporting the brokers and the realtors and the MLS structure that provides so much value to consumers is just critical that we get over these hurdles with standards.
I think if there's any agents or brokerages, tech companies listening to this, which I know there are, they're probably very excited that you are fascinated about this, solving this problem, because they are probably not. But let's actually talk about that, because RESO, it's like agents should care about what RESO is doing. Brokerages should care about what RESO is doing. Same with tech startups, but they might not even know why they should care, why they should get informed, why they should be staying up to date with what's going on. So let's start with the agent. If I'm an agent, why should I be caring about RESO?
Yeah, so for an agent, it's just about technology, really. You have probably gone to conferences, you've gone to trade shows, you've said, that's a great tech tool, I want that in my business, and you've given them your credit card. Come to find out it takes 6 months for them to get data access because they haven't worked in your MLS marketplace yet. And when they do get access, they have to remap all of their systems because your MLS's database has far different fields than another MLS. And these can be the exact same data. It might just be room data, it might just be list price data, but if it's not done according to standards, then the data doesn't match in the technology tools. So now your agents are sitting on their hands waiting for these technology products to be available to them. Even further than that, again, that smartphone experience that we talked about, you would like your MLS tools to be able to work with your lead gen tools and your CRM and integrate with your agent collaboration tools. And most of the data that works in these systems is really the same. But because sometimes it's not standardized or it's not shared in a standardized way, getting that access so you can have really interoperable tools and have that smartphone experience is very difficult. And agents know a lot of times their consumers have better technology than they do. A lot of times their consumers are using apps that seem to work better than what the agent has. And that doesn't mean the data is as good as what the agents have from the MLS, but the technology built by billion-dollar consumer companies a lot of times gives the client better technology than the agent. So if that's a frustration for an agent, a large part of why that happens is because the industry hasn't fully adopted standards.
What about the brokerage? So I've even met some brokerages who have no idea what RESO is.
Sure.
Why should I care to get informed and get into it, maybe be a member?
Yeah, so for brokerages, it really takes that technology conversation to the next level because the agents have their tools and brokers support all those tools. And brokers want to be able to say, go out and do your business and sell. Here's the best app. Here's the best CRM. We've supplied it to you. You don't need to go find some third party to do this for you. But extended from the agent part of the business is brokers have back office tools. They've got reporting tools, they've got transaction management tools, you've got finance tools and roster tools and franchisor tools. And again, a lot of these things can't talk to each other. So you're constantly having staff export and import data and re-input into multiple different systems. And again, this is because there isn't a common standard, a common language for sharing data between these tools. Whereas if we all adopt common sharing languages for data, those tools can talk to each other. You can have a lot less of that repetitive input tools. You can have a lot more just instant sharing between your tools and create more efficiency for your brokerage.
So what I'm hearing is agents should see if the tech companies are in line with the standards so that it's easier to integrate, easier to use, and that tech company won't all of a sudden become obsolete or out of business. And brokerages, if you are implementing technology into your back office, into your tool set to say, join my brokerage, then you're also going to want to make sure it's in line so that it doesn't become obsolete, which then helps with retention and long-term sustainability as a brokerage.
That's a great way of saying it. I should
Yeah.
hire you. Yeah, and to your point there, that's asking your technology vendors if not only are they using RESO standards on their internal systems, but are they asking the data partners they work with to push toward a RESO standard? Because it's not anymore just about MLS to brokers' technology. Brokers are also sending that data downstream to other vendors like their back office tools, but also to advertising portals, et cetera. So it's really about using the standard across the entire spectrum of data sharing and asking your technology partners if they're focused on that.
Is there like a Instagram verifications check mark that RESO, the tech companies can have to say like, I am in line with RESO standards? Or
we do have RESO certifications, so
okay.
That's particularly important for multiple listing services. MLSs are, a lot of times it's part of realtor policy for them to be in compliance with RESO standards, but it's also great because we have a lot of technology companies who seek that out, whether they're RESO compliant, whether they're RESO supporters, whether they're just using the RESO badges on their websites, which says RESO member, RESO certified, et cetera. We don't quite have the Instagram yet, the certified badge, but we think that's really important, whether it's a certification because it's a requirement, or even better because folks are going out and they're selling this to the industry and saying, this is important to us because it should be important to you. And really being RESO members and contributing to the standards work is the first step there.
Is there a way that tech companies can kind of, get informed? Like, They're like, okay, do I need to do this right now? I'm a brand new startup, or I just raised a bunch of venture funding. Like, at what point do I need to care about RESO and start making sure that I'm in it and in line?
I think actually for new companies, it's the most important off the bat, because if you're going to develop your technology based on an old standard, you may be changing all of your infrastructure right away, and that kind of investment could really cripple a small organization. So that's really important. Not only that, but you're going to have easier access. If you're accessing data via a RESTful API, and again, sorry for getting into the wonky terminology, but they know exactly how to do that, these new tech companies. Just as importantly, that may become a requirement. It may not just be that folks are doing this because it's good for their systems. Some MLSs, again, are saying we're going to have cutoff dates, and we probably have a half dozen already in the country who have cutoff dates just within this year. So traditional companies usually have more resources and ability to change their systems. They're also more ingrained in their systems, and they've spent years building these systems out. So it's more difficult for them, and that's something that we understand. Resources are necessary, and the commitment's necessary there. But as a new company, this would be the way I would want to drive all of my development work, is so that I know when the next version of standard comes out, I'll be out ahead of that curve, and I'll be the first one who's able to adopt and implement any changes.
Let's talk a little bit further about the standards. And when you look at all the different types of data, all the standards that you're trying to make uniform and make high quality, what are some of the ones at the top of the list that are not good enough and will create big, improvements, enhancements to the experience for everyone if we can get to high quality uniformity?
Sure. So, the web API is probably our number one thing right now, and I've spoken about that already, but it's a very straightforward, moving the industry forward. We moved from FTP to RETS, and now it's RETS to web API. Just simply means a modern version of sharing data. So that's sort of uniformly needed across the industry. I think one of the exciting things we're doing is in the data dictionary, which just defines what the data is about. You've got, let's say, a room in Seattle's called a great room, and in California it's called a bonus room, and in the Southeast it's called a frog. It's a finished room over garage. Well, any technology tool should be able to understand it's just a room over a garage. It's the same room. So as we standardize those different terms that you can use locally, because they're very interesting and people use that locally in their systems, but on the back end you've got those standardized in a common language, then you've got technology companies who can go to 600 MLSs and say, do you use a data dictionary feed? Can we have it? And they'll understand what most of the data looks like immediately when they get that. So taking it to another level, you've got what's being called payloads, which is basically buckets of data that fit different technology tools. So you want a website, you need bucket A. You want a CRM, you need bucket B. You need a back office tool for your brokerage, you need bucket C. And as we define each of those things for brokerages, for MLSs, they can say, I've got bucket A, B, and C ready to go. I know exactly what those look like. The technology vendor who builds websites says, I need bucket A, and he goes to every MLS and says, you all know what bucket A looks like. I built my tool to accept that. You're firing up agent websites in 15 minutes. You're firing up agent collaboration apps with their consumers in seconds. So being able to define, again, what's called payloads, but are really just buckets of data that most technology tools use, and you've got 95% of the technology companies who could use that right away. And then you can still allow for an MLS to have all kinds of other creative ways that they share data within their marketplace. But this is, again, just adding clarity to the marketplace for people to be able to build innovative technology and not feel like I have to change my tool every time I go into a new market, which is, we've talked about, really just creates stagnation in terms of the new companies coming into the marketplace.
Well, I'm imagining that fear of like, oh, if I have to change this once, how many times do I also have to change and update, which then reduces adoption in general. I mean, adoption is the problem, or wanting to move forward. What are you seeing as to like why people are so afraid or so hesitant to adopt new stuff?
Well, it's always scary to change your systems, especially when you're running a business full time and you don't have an immediate new profit center by doing that. You may not have immediate results in terms of efficiencies there. But there's probably also, again, the lack of maybe understanding, the lack of people having seen success stories. So sometimes it's a lack of solutions that people are aware of. So some of what we do is not just about innovation, but it's about taking away pain points. So the old pain point of duplicate listings, of an agent and a broker submitting a listing to an advertising portal, but it also comes from the MLS, and it also comes from the franchisor, and maybe from another marketing tool. And you get the same listing multiple times on a big public website. It's a really straightforward problem, but it can be very difficult for technology companies to be able to know that that listing was in 4 different MLSs. I need to combine those all into one listing. Well, we can use unique property identifiers now that can tell you exactly what property is in every single MLS, broker, agent system, etc. So when those all come into the franchise or they all come into the big advertising portal, they can see that same property identifier. And so that's one of RESO's standards, is a unique property identifier for any property in the nation and eventually globally, to be able to unify those. And just in terms of a boots on the ground solution, as a broker, I know the pain of the agent calling up and saying, my client is really mad. There's 2 of his listings on abc.com. His listing's not showing up because there was a collision of 3 different listings, and you can imagine a broker in a market where your agents are in 6 different MLSs, how often that probably happens. So, having to track that down, having to get the seller happy and the agent happy and talk to the franchise company and figure out what happened is just a day-to-day problem that can be solved with these kind of solutions.
Now, is that the agent wasn't inputting the new listing correctly in the first place, or is that because the seller wanted to be on multiple MLSs and those MLSs don't speak?
It's usually about the lack of common language. Sometimes there's always, there are input issues, but you can have one system that stores an apartment as APT4 and another one starts it as unit number 4. So if the technology systems don't store things the same way, then they don't look like the same listing when they come together on another website. And a lot of times the agents have to be in multiple MLSs because that's when we've got the overlapping market disorder of MLSs in some marketplaces. It's a necessity to get market-wide coverage that way.
Let's talk about like technology and when you look at the industry, what do you think is redundant and inefficient and needs to be replaced and solved quickly?
I think that from a high level, we can continue to tell folks who are agents, brokerages, and MLSs that what's local is important. All real estate's local. What you do that is different and interesting in your marketplace can be preserved. And that's really important to be able to do. But technology is global. So when we're building the same kinds of tools over and over in different ways that solve the exact same problem, we need to be able to come together and say, we don't need redundant technology written in different ways and different systems to do the exact same thing. We have good solutions. We've got solutions to the same problems, and if we'll all agree, again, on a common standard with your local implementations are going to have various interesting things that you do because of your marketplace again. But if we can come together for common standards for technology, for that foundation of the technology, and then be able to go out to all of the different organizations where you've got MLSs that are for-profit and non-profit and some that are run by associations with committees, and have everyone, even though their organizations are very different, be able to see a very clear picture of what the path forward is. I think that's what really moves people forward on technology.
What are you working on right now? Like what's going to be coming down the pipe in the next 12 months on your end?
Yeah, I think one of the big things we're working on is working with Council of MLS and the National Association of Realtors on data access marketing. So there's a famous saying by Greg Robertson from W&R Studios when he talks to new technology companies who start out their pitch about what they're going to do. And it starts out with, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the MLS data. And he says, whoa, 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 you realize that's the next 3 years of your life, right? It's a joke, but at the same time, as you know, that's the reality of getting data access is so different in every different market. And we're really starting at a very high level of just saying, let folks know what the process looks like. So let's have an MLS, have a data access page on your website, and just let us know, who do I call first to get this data access? What are the rules? what does the data licensing policy look like? What kind of method are you using? Is it RETS? Is it Web API? Who's my tech support person? How much is it going to cost me? Can I just see a pricing sheet that says if I'm a vendor, if I'm a broker, if I'm somebody else, what's my cost to be a member or to be a participant in this organization with a broker as a technology company? And really just sort of create a uniform way of everybody saying, these are really the starting points for data access. We shouldn't have a broker call a technology vendor and say, do this for me, and the vendor shows up on the MLS website and says, I don't know who to call. And they get somebody in customer service who routes them to somebody in IDX, who routes them to somebody else, and they still
I've had the problem.
You've been through this. So, so again, we allow for the fact that there's a lot of differences in organizations, and you can have a lot of creativity on your end, but let's have a starting point that's a baseline that says, here's the 10 things you need to start getting access to data here, and you can understand right up front if the costs are too high for you, if the data licensing bar is too high, it doesn't fit with your tools, but just providing that clarity to the industry in terms of data access.
We could probably go into a lot of this detail because startups, if you want to play with the data in real estate, you have to understand where this industry is and where it's going and how it's getting there in order to even think about how to even build your technology. So you got to get in touch with Sam and RESO and learn about this stuff before you build it, or else you could literally, and I've seen this before, go out of business because you all of a sudden came into a problem with the data set that took you 6 months to try to figure out, and then all of a sudden you ran out of cash and then you're no longer in business. So startups, you've got to talk to RESO and just learn about this stuff. Agents, you're buying so many tech companies and you always complain that some go up, some go down. It's usually because they don't even understand how to provide the proper service they want to provide to you. So you need to make sure that the stuff that you're buying from people is in line with RESO. Brokerages, your number one problem is retention. And if you have more tech stuff happening in the background, you also need to make sure you even are a member of RESO, you commit to improving this industry instead of waiting for someone with $1 billion to try to recreate the whole thing from scratch, because that really could happen. And so you got to be a part of this, part of the change, part of the movement, and make sure that whatever you're building in order to retain agents and give them tools that they actually need is in line with RESO. So if people want to get in touch with you, because I think it's super important, because the world is about technology moving the whole industry forward, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure, so you can get in touch with us at reso.org. You can email me directly at sam@reso.org. I think another thing that would be great is if you'd like to be a part of our work groups, if you would like to come to our conferences, you can become a member of RESO and you can do that. You can not only influence the future of standards and the development of standards, but network with people who've been through the struggles of starting a new company, of getting access to data, and really understand organizationally how that works with RESO, how that works with MLSs that are a part of a realtor association, and really understand where the difficulties will be and be able to prepare yourself for those and prepare your company, because you're building a great product, but the logistics of the industry require you to understand that foundation. And for us, we're the place you can find those things out really quickly by coming out to a RESO conference with a whole room of geeks who work on this stuff for every day and have for years. And they love sharing and they love collaborating, and you're really investing in the industry, and that goodwill of being a RESO member really brings you the opportunity to talk to people and frankly have people help you that otherwise might not know who you were, because they know you're working to improve the industry.
I think it's great that we have a person who has so much energy trying to figure this stuff out, because we all need help with it. And you guys can't see this on camera, but he even has RESO socks on. Freaking amazing. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Grant. Great being here again.
All right. Well, stay tuned for another episode. Subscribe to the channel so you can always stay up to date and get to know and learn from the leaders in real estate.